Welcome into another episode of Everything is Logistics, a podcast for the thinkers in freight. I am your host, Blythe Brumleve, and I'm happy to welcome in Clarke. Let me start that over again. Okay.
Everyone does that. I've been called Clarke Brad a lot.
Well, I had it.
I know. Bradley Clarke. Brad Clarke doesn't matter.
Well, I saw that you had filled out the thing as Bradley Clarke, but in your email it said Brad.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that you go by Brad.
Brad or Bradley. It doesn't matter. It's just you said phonetically. I'm like, okay, well, it's hard to do Brad phonetically, so I just put Lee in the end just to create a, something.
Yeah, at least tried to get folks, and it's not necessarily like for your name, obviously, but for other folks that, I just don't want to like insult them or something like that. Like that's typically why I ask that the phonetic spelling. So
which makes sense. So are we recorded and like video and audio or just audio only? Like a podcast is just audio? Sorry for my ignorance. I've never listened to one. I've never done one. So
really? So first time on listening to or I guess being on a podcast?
Never been on one, never listened to one. Friends.
Oh, wow.
A lot of our friends, they go to bed at night listening to podcasts. I'm like, what? I just don't get it. I think it's just a generational thing, maybe.
Well, it could be that they're listening to, there's actually podcasts now that specialize in like sleep sounds, like stories to go to sleep to, sounds, like relaxing sounds, white noise.
We hear all the time. It's crazy.
You'd be surprised that with a lot of YouTube channels that it's just the sound of rain or thunder and rain. And this playlist will last for 8 hours. And they're they make a shit ton of money from just having these it has a high listenership rate. And I know with a lot of truckers in general, I'm actually working on a separate podcast right now for truckers because when they get home, they find it very challenging to sleep because they're not hearing the sounds of the road, the sounds of the truck running. And it's a problem for them.
Live on Broadway or something, and or by the train station, like on the Blues Brothers,
Right. Yeah. Well, I guess this is kind of I don't even have to do a countdown as I normally would with a podcast. I think we're just going to roll right into this.
It seemed to disrupt the whole thing, the whole counting. Like, who are we?
Yeah,
what are you doing?
I mean, it works well for my editor, so he'll probably hate me as far as like the editing point.
It's just like verbal diarrhea for 68 minutes. Like, what was there a starting point? Who's this guy? Ex-boyfriend, or what is this guy doing?
So let me I'll make his job a little bit easier and I'll let him know. So I'll count it down again. 3, 2, 1. Welcome into another episode of Everything is Logistics, a podcast for the thinkers in freight. I am your host, Blythe Brumleve, and I'm happy to welcome in Brad Clarke. He is an independent business owner agent over at SPI Logistics, and we're talking about building up your broker business. We've also been chatting well before the start of that official intro that you've heard. We have learned so far about Brad explaining the broker relationship. So for folks who may not, I guess, have a good explanation, a good elevator pitch for explaining what a broker does, how do you pitch it to them?
Elevator pitch, I like that. So less than 30 seconds, depending on the height of the building. Yeah, it's people. If it's a real estate agent, they understand that. If it's a mortgage broker, they understand that. But if they don't understand that, then you just picture we perform marriages between shipper and trucker. We unite these. They don't consummate anything, but they do in a way by their bill of ladings and whatever they're shipping. But generally they get that when you give them that analogy.
Yeah, you usually have to. I find, explaining anything in this industry as you have to use other industries in order to explain it. Even with the massive amount of, news coverage that we've gotten ever since the Ever Given got stuck in the Suez Canal, people still just don't generally understand this industry. So that was a good breakdown.
Thank you.
All right. Well, as I mentioned in the intro, you are an agent for SBI Logistics. SBI, I should probably just go ahead and preface this. You definitely will hear an ad for them during the show. They are a proud sponsor of the podcast. But with that said, there have been no discussions, sort of no, I guess you have to answer or ask these questions. There's been none of that. This is completely free-flowing conversation, as authentic as they come. So hopefully you folks will enjoy this conversation about maybe you're a freight broker and you want to become a freight agent, or maybe you're with a current agent provider and you're thinking about switching. So if either of those fall into that bucket of interest for you, this is the episode for you. So I want to kind of, Brad, with you, I want to kind of start off with a little bit of historical context when you sort of move into the modern day aspects of running a freight brokerage, because you ran a 3PL before you became a freight agent. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that story?
Yeah, well, it's been in our family since the 70s, I guess. My dad had a trucking company, and from that it evolved into warehousing and running distribution centers, warehouses, working with the railroad, kind of brokering rail freight and freight that goes on the railroad, to it kind of evolving into, I guess, the freight agent or freight broker. I don't really know the difference between those two, but I guess the agency would be the administrator and the broker would be the individual that is doing most of the work, I guess. But so it just kind of evolved to simplicity, less risk, less overhead, less employees, less stress, and then, freight brokering, it could be as simple as, one person, or, 3 people, 5 people, or many people. There's different sizes of those types of scenarios.
And so when you are, you're in the family business, which I think a lot of folks within trucking come from, it usually starts out as that family business, and then you either grow and continue the momentum, or you get out of it. And so for you chose to stay in the freight brokerage business, but you evolved a little bit on how you approached it. So partnering with was SBI your first agent relationship, or did you have another agent relationship before you jumped to SBI?
Well, yeah, it was like our family business, but it eventually, as it grows, it was a very small at the time, but as it grew, the risks grew, and so you need an agency that's larger, that has better insurance, they've got better support, anyway, that's just why I wanted to go into something more structured than kind of, taking on all the AR risk, all the AP risk, and just because things go south, pretty quickly in the freight business game, and when freight you're hauling is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you're doing 15, 20 loads a week or whatever it is, you soon start. Your risk and also your cash flow is key, and most truckers want to get paid quick, and so you can only quick pay so many truckers if your customers don't pay you quick. So eventually you have to jump into an agency like SBI, for example, which of course I chose to do.
And so when you were, I guess, what was the catalyst for making that decision to become a freight agent? Was it like a month-long, like 6-month process where you kind of thought about taking the leap, and then you started assessing the situation? Like what were the questions that you wanted to be answered to ensure that this was the right move to make?
Well, cash flow was number one. I mean, how quick do you get paid? But I guess to jump into the freight brokerage, you just have to understand it, because I wasn't really doing freight brokerage until about 2010. I mean, we were brokering in some ways over the last 35, 40 years, or at least I was. But as far as strictly just, having what I call a non-asset based broker, meaning you don't have any trucks, you don't have any insurance policies, you're just you and the phone. but that's just what made it more, I guess, more desirable, I guess, just having, because I had companies with employees, and it was eventually, it's just, you realize that you're getting burned out. So you need to have a little more streamline something, let someone else worry about it, and do what I do is just, create relationships with customers and figure out, what their challenges are and what they need and how we can, kind of help them out.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're freed up because of all these worries that you no longer have, then I'm sure it makes it so much easier to not only sleep at night because your employees are getting taken care of, but also your carriers and your customers are getting taken care of on a regular basis to where you can focus on where you really shine. Is that a safe assumption?
Yeah, so many people, they want to, just do everything, right? They want to micromanage everything. But what they fail to realize is that they're only good at everything, maybe say 20%. Whereas if you take out all the other, accounting crap, payables crap, cash flow crap, that then you can, your 20% goes into 90% into communications with your customers and taking care of the truckers. You just focus, it's like a laser beam onto your target. Whereas I find, at least for me, I was just spread out too much, and you just get burned out, and you just become more focused if you just have one or two things to worry about.
And so when you kind of decided that this was the route that you were going to take, were there any, I guess, red flags during the process? Not saying, with SBI, but maybe during that you wanted to avoid with potentially other companies or horror stories that you may have heard. Did any red flags sort of stick out to you, or was it a pretty easy choice just to go with SBI?
Well, initially, when SBI approached me, I did work with other brokers and like guys with Landstar and TQL, some of the more larger companies, and no one was really happy, because they were locked into this kind of a 2-year non-compete thing, and they had a low commission rate, and they were just kind of a number in the 30,000 guys on the board, right? And where SBI, you meet with the president and sales manager, Mike and Joe, and they were kind of a boutique brokerage firm that had a great commission rate, and it just seemed to be just more of a kind of a family-oriented type organization, and you felt like you were a name and not just a number. Even though they are throughout North America, and they're I think the top 100 brokers in North America. I think they are. I should know this. Sorry, Joe.
Well, I imagine if they're treating their agent partners like you say they are, with the feeling like, I know it's kind of cliche to say, but feeling like your family, then that goes a lot further than not just being a number in someone's system. That I'm sure that definitely helps.
Yeah, there's because in freight or transportation, there's always something that happens. There's always challenges, and you need to speak to someone at head office to figure out a solution. And I think some of those larger monster brokerage firms, they can't do it because it's just too political, or they're just too big to care, I think. And they'll love you if you're probably the top 5 guys that have 30,000, but I think the middle guys are probably left out to hang out.
Sure. And I think that sort of, pivots into, my next question, because I'm wondering, what do you think makes for a successful freight agent in today's world?
Well, you got to be organized and adaptable. Like, you need to be kind of, computer friendly. Basically, every day is kind of a new day, mentality. And just realizing that, especially now, everything changes so quickly, and your customers' challenges change quickly. So you just need to be not doing the same thing every single time, but realizing next week it might be different, and you just have to, kind of roll it out. And that's to me, if you're flexible and adaptable, you will be on your way to being a successful agent.
And so say if I'm, for example, if I'm a freight broker, not a freight agent, I'm a freight broker working in, a big company or maybe even a smaller or mid-sized company. And I'm thinking I've got 2 or 3 maybe really good customers. What steps should I start thinking about taking if I want to make that jump into becoming a freight agent?
Well, you're probably too late because you're locked into a contract. So you're pretty much hooped, because you probably get a non-compete contract, and you need to own your customers. And if you don't own them, meaning if the brokerage firm you're working for owns your customers and you're just the liaison, you'll probably have to do a lot of other agents do in large companies. They have to quit, wait 2 years, and then start again. But yeah, I mean, if you're able to go on your own, basically you want to go out as soon as you can have enough to live on for 7 days, because generally you get paid every 7 days, right? So, like I say, cash flow is the key, because you're working 100% commission, and you want to make sure you can survive, a month or 2. That's the key, because that's, you have to live on something.
How do you own your customers if you're a freight broker? Is it possible at all? Is that, something that you can do, maybe when you're getting hired, negotiate that, or look for companies that maybe don't have, non-solicits or non-competes? Do those exist?
Well, they exist within SBI, so I would imagine they would exist with other companies. I know they don't exist with like Landstar, TQL type environments, because I've talked to guys that work there, and if they leave, they can't go to another company and solicit any of their companies they work with. So it's it's quite crazy. You think you'd work 5-6 years for a customer, and you'd think you could just go anywhere and take that business, just like a real estate agent could go from one agency to another agency. And if Bob the builder wants to buy another house, you could phone him up and say, hey, it's a free world. But within the freight brokerage business, you're contractually combined in a lot of them. But like I say, that does not exist within SBI. If you want to go and somewhere else, they say, hey, thanks for the ride, but no doubt they're going to probably talk to your customers because they know exactly. But generally, if you're happy within an environment and you're getting paid well, life should just continue on.
And it's probably I think that's kind of the way it should be. If you are going to leave a freight brokerage and you don't have that non-solicit, you don't have that non-compete, it should actively be, the freight agent going after the business that they've been handling for a while, and also the freight broker trying to see if he has that strong enough relationship in order to take that into, a new relationship with a new agency. And so I would imagine that for a lot of these brokers that are just plucked right out of college, they're, sat at a desk at, a big brokerage, and they're just a number there too. And so I imagine for a lot of these folks that they should really try to prioritize not working for, the bigger companies, but maybe prioritizing finding a freight brokerage that actually doesn't have those constraints on them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I could see if you're new and they give you clients of theirs to work just to learn the system, fine. But if you find 2 or 3 other customers that are brand new, you should be able to own them. And, it makes sense. And if they did that, I think they would have a lot more happier employees or agents working for them.
I've heard it said that you kind of have to have a strong entrepreneurial mindset in order to be a good freight agent. What lifestyle aspects about being a freight agent do you really enjoy? And then what aspects do you not enjoy, or you enjoy a little less?
Well, definitely the flexible hours. You can kind of work, anywhere. I mean, I work from home, and you can kind of work anywhere in the world as long as you have an email, internet connection, phone. And we have internet, phone, voice over IP telephones, so you can kind of use your cell phone and talk to your customers. So, you have to be accessible, but that is the nice thing about being a freight broker. You don't have to commute. I hate commuting. Well, I did it a lot, but I hate it now when I see the traffic jams in the 5 o'clock news. And I feel badly because I think there's opportunities for people, to do what I do, right? And you mentioned frustrating things, or the most challenging is because when you work directly with truckers, truckers, sadly, and sorry to the truckers out there, but you do lie, right? And when things go south, you don't pick up the phone. And they will avoid you for whatever reason because they don't want to tell you, my truck broke down, or yeah, but it's not bad news. It's all good news, right? Communication is all, because trucking is never perfect, right? It's like a marriage. It's hard work, right? You gotta, commit to the trucker, but they have a hard time committing to you. And granted, there's a lot of brokers out there that do mess up their reputation, and they mess them around a little bit. And because in the end, the customer wants updates, and we have to chase our trucker. And if you're chasing them all day looking for an answer, that is the most frustrating thing, because you can't give your customer a proper answer to what they want, a simple answer, right? Like, where is my freight?
Right. It's more loads and where's my freight? I think that's the answer and the question that every freight broker is asking every single day. And it's funny because I follow a couple subreddits, which is like an online forum for, comments and discussions. And one of them is for freight brokers and one of them is for truckers. And you can see within each group the finger pointing between the two of them. So I think that's typically pretty entertaining to watch it all unfold and try to digest the madness. Yeah,
it's because brokers, and what happens is a lot of brokers are underpaid, they're undercommissioned, and they're stressed out, and every little dollar is like their bread and butter. But if, the agencies that have a better commission structure and the broker is more comfortable, he's less stressed, then he can, the truckers seem to like them more. But you just have to, but there is this evil, good and bad, good cop, bad cop all the time. And it's been that way for decades. Every trucker hates a broker and every broker hates a trucker, but, we should love truckers because they're our bread and butter. They're the good guys. They're almost, they are as important as the customer because, we should treat them like a customer, really. The trucker.
Yeah, because without either one of them, you're kind of out of business.
Yeah, because they're your partner. You're partnering with them to deliver, and we get paid. They get paid. So we're kind of in this. We're kind of, partnering like Batman and Robin. Like, okay, we got this. Not that your customer is the villain, but sorry. Delete. Sorry.
No, I'm fairly certain that a lot of folks will resonate, and if the online forum subreddits that I read, a lot of people echo that same thought process on both sides. So, in speaking of sort of issues within the industry, one of the more prominent issues that has sort of risen over the last few months is the double brokering. This has been probably an industry-wide problem for a long time, but it feels like it's picked up much more over the last year. For folks who don't really know about double brokering, can you kind of give us that high-level view of what it is and why it's sort of evolved into the problem that it is today?
Well, it is a very confusing subject because I would say many people don't know what even within the transportation business, they don't know what double brokering is. Sure. But, in a nutshell, it's you give your load to a trucker, you hire the trucker, and he goes and basically hires another trucking company to do the load. So they pick up the load, they deliver the load, they get a bill of lading, they give it to him, and he gives it to me. And he doesn't do the work, so he's basically double brokering that load. But the announcement is everybody is a double broker. Even big companies, like Canada Post, Purolator, FedEx, they all have commitments. They all have contracts with individual trucking firms. But guess what? You go to the local Canada Post yard and ABC Trucking Company has that contract, but he gives it to 20 other truckers because he has this crazy commitment level. And so you can double broker as long as everybody in the loop is in the loop, right? So, but I'm sure the guy that has the Canada Post or the FedEx contract isn't telling his FedEx rep, hey, listen, you need to do 10 loads today, but I've only got 5 of my company trucks. Do you mind if I give these trucks to 5 other guys? They don't care. They just want the business done from A to B. And, they have commitments as long as their insurance is fine and everything goes. And in the end, the guy that holds the contract is on the line. But as long as everyone knows, it's okay. So I think, they should find another name for it. They shouldn't call it double brokering because call it identity theft or jackass brokering or something like that. I don't know. I just call it something else because it's a term that has been unidentified. It's been misused and anyway.
It almost sounds like lack of the lack of communication and then the lack of accountability when something does go wrong, which often does happen in logistics. And I think for a lot of companies, whenever they do hire a broker or when they do hire a carrier and then it goes to another carrier, then the financial responsibility is misplaced. And then if something goes wrong, then they're responsible, not the actual party that did it.
Yeah, but I mean, don't get me wrong. There are people out there that are literally doing it to be misleading. They're trying to steal loads, or steal trailers, which happens. But that isn't double brokering. That's just a form of dishonesty and illegal activity. But those guys are yes, that is becoming a problem, and because of the online, everything is online, everything is public information. Whether it's if you can go online and punch in the guy's MC number and he can find everything about him. You can find how many trucks he has. You can get a copy of his certificate of insurance. You can get how many parking tickets the guy's got, like everything. So that's the problem. I mean, yes, information is good to get, but I think people are using that information. I mean, imagine if you had all your information, your credit card information, your banking information, all your passwords, all public on your Facebook page, for example. Like you'd be harassed and scammed within the minute, right? So, but that's the problem, is that every trucking company has this information online for anyone to look at. And that's being abused, literally. That's why it's become such a problem.
So how do you avoid it? How do you avoid getting caught in a scheme like that?
Well, you definitely got to be vigilant. You've got to, if it's a blocked phone number, then yeah, you just say, hey, bye. Their email, check their emails. Most companies have a website. And if if they phone and it still kind of checks out, then, if you book something, then I just phone the head office. Hey, who is this guy? Is he working with you? Whatever. But, if you just do little things like that, just checking how they're communicating with you, or they just book a load and they don't even ask the rate, Okay, sure, I'll do that load. Just send me the booking. So
there's definitely red flags to look for.
Yeah.
To avoid that from happening, but probably can't catch it all.
Yeah.
And so with you had mentioned, looking at someone to see if they have a website, and also that's kind of a perfect segue to get into a little bit of the sales and marketing side of things. And so with freight brokerages, a lot of, as someone who's been, marketing in some capacity with a 3PL for, more than 10 years, the common thing that I hear is that we're all the same. We're all providing, the same level of services or the same services to a lot of different folks. And so how do I differentiate myself? So for you and running your business, how are you differentiating yourself? What does your marketing or sales outreach strategy look like?
Well, you're always got to be available to both trucker and customers, because it's a, it's not a 24/7 operation, but it is in a way. I mean, there are holidays, but you just got to be available as much as you can, and you try to be as honest as you can and as fair as you can, and because like I say, it's every week there's something happens that crumbles the house of cards, and you just have to restack it again and just try to get not too emotional about it. It's not personal, it's just right business. So that's just, you just have to, and I think a lot of brokers, they just, like I said, they treat the trucker like the enemy, and it's just a bad attitude. They treat it like, he's taking something from me, but you have to treat it like they're giving you something. And if you think of it that way, then the truckers will understand that, and they'll sense it, because a lot of these guys, they're just living in their truck, right? They don't have a dispatch team, and a lot of these guys are lone wolves. So you need to, you just need to
keep that open communication.
Yeah, exactly.
And so with you in particular, I imagine that you probably have a pretty solid customer base. And correct me if I'm wrong, but are you actively out there trying to find new customers? And what does that process look like for you? Are you, sending emails or cold calling? Like, what does that look like for you?
Not really. I always like going for the challenging freight, because if it was easy, everyone does it, right? So you just stay away from what I call the bread and butter stuff, the book a shipment, send a shipment, book a truck. But it's nice to have over-dimensional stuff and just stuff that needs thinking about, because you narrow down the competition. But
so that's your niche, is the over-dimensional and just almost like weird freight.
Yeah, but I'm not out there cold calling, like you say, or doing stuff like that. Generally, once you have like a select bit of business, typically, if it's going to a new consignee, I'll phone them. Hey, and we got this shipment coming to you, and I just want to introduce myself, and I, reconfirm the hours and the address and who my driver sees to unload his freight, and and so when the freight gets there, how did it go? Was everything go okay? Yeah, okay. And who makes the decisions in your company for freight? Like, are you guys having trucks every day? Do you have and you just, whether it's the shipper and the consignee, you're not interfering with your customer because they don't really care. You're just trying to, synergize and expand and reach out to these people and get to know your supply chain. And then generally, we often, as you get more into the brokerage life, you get calls. And hey, I heard
you're getting those referrals.
Yeah, the referrals are from these shippers. But you always got to make sure wherever you go, if there's ever an group email going out, you always reply, even if it doesn't refer to you, or you say, okay, thanks for all the stuff, and all these people are in the loop. You're okay. Save that guy's information, save that guy's.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it's like an advertising. They see your signature and have a signature. Oh, how many people reply to you in an email? And it's just like, please add a signature, because it's it's free advertising, people. Like, don't forget that.
Oh, I love that approach, because then you're not necessarily you're not cold calling at all. It's already like somebody that is expecting communication from you. So it's a little bit of a warm lead. And then if they can't help you, then it almost sounds like they can refer you to a lot of people that you could help. Is that that's probably the right play of what you're focusing on? Yeah,
because if there's a group email, then once it's all, say if there's a problem, right? Everyone's involved. Manager, customer, sales guys involved. It could be a negative thing. But then it all works out. And then in the end, you might pick a few guys. Oh, this guy's the branch manager here of this company. and you'll just privately email them, hey, I got your from this thing. I hope everything worked out. Like, are there any other challenges in your company that you deal with that upsets you that maybe I can help you out with? Or anyway, it's just a way in to, but for every shipment you do, there are your customer, the trucker, the shipper, the consignee involved, and there's 5 or 6 people for every single transaction, and you should get to know every individual in that chain.
I like that tip. I think I'm actually going to add a link to my email newsletter in my email signature now because of all the, if you think about it, all the emails that we're sending all day, that's constant communication, and it's a way to, when you have somebody's email, you have the direct line of communication. You don't have to worry about social media algorithms and websites and hoping that maybe somebody lands on your website. So it's right there in front of them. If they're interested, they can get more information.
Yeah, and you're already in their social profile. You're not going to go to junk mail because they're already, and if you know their first and last name, and it just, it's a good segue in.
Well, speaking of which, do you do any kind of social media posting, or do you have a website? Like, what does, I guess, your other marketing strategy look like?
Not really. SBI does everything. They do all of that, and that's what they get paid for, right? I don't do any other. I'm not even on social media personally, sadly.
I was going to say, because I was trying to do research for this interview.
Who's this guy? I don't have Facebook. I used to have Instagram, but it's just, I don't, because it's funny because everyone's problems are about cyberbullying or cyber this or online shaming. But if you don't go online, then guess what? No one shames you, right? It's a simple solution. It's just a weird problem that if people will just turn off their phone, or disengage that. So I'm not slamming social media because I think there's a good venues for that. But, corporately, yes, or workforce, yes, but personally, no. I tried LinkedIn for a while, but you get all these just constant goofy people trying to connect with you that have no relationship to your business. Hey, I'm some guy, I want to, train elephants in the circus. Like, come join me. I'm like, I don't do that, man. Like, why? Don't you read my thing, what I'm doing? Anyway.
Maybe you could haul the elephants for them.
Yes. That would be a challenging thing. And overweight.
Right. It doesn't exactly fall in the right dimensions.
No, not too many shapely elephants out there, but...
Do you ever think about, I ask about social media in particular, because I think that, from my conversation with other freight agents just over the years, you're not alone. A lot of them just don't have, they're too busy with their own customers in order to even invest in it. I actually just gave a talk on how to even get started on social media as a freight agent. And a lot of them were interested, but it's a very small percentage that will take that kind of advice and then go put it into action and then do it on a consistent basis. So you really have to be dedicated to it. But that's for me personally, that's my way of email marketing, like how you do with you connect with different referrals and things like that. That's how I use social media, is as a referral basis, not necessarily cold DMing people and sending weird messages about elephants in a circus. So I think that there's some value, but I find it really interesting how you mentioned the email tip, because I think that a lot of other agents will find some value in that just have no interest in social media whatsoever, but that's still a way of being social, and you already have the person's contact information.
Yeah, there is a value for social media, don't get me wrong, and a lot of companies rely on it, like for you, for example, but within the brokerage, I don't think a lot of people are connecting with other shippers or consignees. I might be wrong, but I don't, it's just, to me, it's not a waste of time, but just there's other ways to do it, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, there's definitely, a bunch of different ways to skin a cat. And I think for a lot of just brokerages in general, there are really only a few that I can think of off the top of my head that are doing a really good job at social. Because these shippers, putting it to their perspective, they're getting cold calls, cold emails. Their door is getting beat down from brokers trying to get their business. So they don't interact on social media that much. But if your approach is a little bit different, like I mention them all the time, I swear they don't pay me to do this, but a company called Freightvana, they have all of their employees that are very active, all their brokers, HR, that kind of sales guys, they're very active on LinkedIn, and they make a point to not only talk about the services that they provide, but they plant a tree for every load they ship.
Wow.
And because of that messaging that they've put out on social media, now when they go to conferences, they claim that they have shippers coming up to them and wanting to book a meeting with them because, they have environmental goals that the corporate office is kind of, putting on them to, go after. And so they see that and they think, okay, well, I'm going to do business with them because then that's going to help, my role and my, help ease the boss off my back. So I thought that's an interesting, sort of angle as well. But it does take a lot of persistence. It takes a lot of consistency.
You might lose the lumber industry because their motto is the only good tree is a dead tree. Sorry.
Which definitely cuts into, sort of the oversized market that you're after.
You don't want to be saying things to eliminate, one sector of the, which of a huge industry, especially from Canada.
100%. And now, with your respect to your current customers that you have an ongoing relationship with, the last few years have, I don't have to tell anybody that it's been absolutely insane and that we don't know, sort of what normal looks like. How are you communicating, what those market conditions look like to your customers, or do they just don't care, just move the freight?
Well, price is always, we have contractual freight, not fuel surcharged, kind of in there, but we definitely give them weekly updates, especially when things go south, like when diesel doubles in prices, or there's a natural disaster like here, in Canada we had flooding, or there's wildfires. There's things that deviate trucks from the main routes, so you have to email them and say, hey, listen, this whole highway got wiped out and we got to add X amount of dollars to your freight rate because we have to go around. And they understand that. So it just seems like that's happening a lot more. And also the lack of trucks is becoming an issue as well. So SBI gives good, they have a guy that works, I think his name is Mark, and he updates us every week as to what's going around. Every week, Joe, the president, gives us a video. Nice little 10-minute video as to what's going around, where he's at, he's lobbying in various states. So you're always kept up, and generally, I'll either forward the links to some of my clients, so they, especially when things like last year, things were crazy. I mean, even during COVID, it was pretty crazy. Just some of the rates doubled, tripled. But because it's just that's the way it was. You had guys weren't around, and you had a lot of other lanes were shut down for many months. It was crazy.
But that's cool that they provide you that industry, because that's another tip I give to a lot of freight agents is be that trusted source and be the person who is studying the market conditions and then letting them know this is why the price increases or decreases and this is what's going on in the market. But that's cool that they do that for you. So that's one less thing that you have to worry about doing.
Yeah, if anything happens in the trucking industry, somebody in SBI is going to either phone you, send you a video message, or a nice, very detailed listing of what's happening in the market and where. So it's one less thing again we have to do as brokers, because the mothership SBI does it all for us. Sorry to wave the SBI flag again, but there it is.
Well, I think we if you've stayed with us for this long during the interview, then you're probably interested in different freight agent programs and what sets some apart from the rest. And I think another aspect of that is that carrier pool and managing those carrier relationships. How often do you have to actively seek out new carriers, or is that being done for you?
Well, it's not done for us, but we do have carriers that we share. We pool together. There's 50, 55 agencies throughout North America, and whatever carriers they get, we have access, in some cases, I think. But when we get good carriers, we add them to our email list, and so every day we just, we send out an email list. And we have load boards too, which is the general way to find truckers. So if we have a good carrier, we have them, give them to the A board, So we have certain, we get to know what lanes they're going to, and you just email them. Say, hey, I've got 2 of these ready for, are you ready to go? So it's a lot easier as you get this internal email list going, and then you can vet them via the SBI system.
And so as we kind of sort of round out this conversation, I think for a lot of folks, if you're still listening and you might be a freight broker, you might be a freight agent stuck with, another agency partnership, if you have the goal of, having kind of a lifestyle like you had mentioned earlier, where you get to work from anywhere and you can kind of set your own hours, and as long as you keep that open line of communication with your customers and your carriers, then you're sitting pretty good. So if you are one of those folks, what advice would you give to one of those folks who wants to get to the level that you're at?
Well, call up SBI and have a sit down with Joe or Mike, right? They're awesome individuals. That's what got me attracted to the company. And they'll invite you. You can just, some brokers actually just go there and they say, hey, and they have an office and a computer there, a phone. You just sit down and they're not going to pay you anything, but you want to just sit there and, there's no brokers within that office, but it's all the administrative staff, the payables, the receivables people, the human resources people.
Technology probably too.
Yeah, but everything flows through that office. And if you just sit there for a week, you learn the lingo, and you just kind of get a sense for if this is really what you want to do. And, if you're going to do it, then if you're going to work from home, make sure you have a good, at-home working environment, and be patient. Like, don't be too aggressive. Don't be that guy that's, I want to get 20 customers this week, and you just start with one and just get to know the supply chain within your city. Like, just drive around, like go and look at all the warehouses and see understand trucking, how it flows, get a sense, go to a truck stop, talk to some truckers, hey, what's your biggest challenge? I hate brokers, so stuff like that. It's, you just want to make sure, but really it's a good industry. I see people all the time and that are looking for work, and, you meet them all the time, and I said, well, you should be a broker. What's that? Then you explain it.
And you go through the elevator pitch again.
Yeah, you get the 30-second elevator pitch, and but like I say, I just say phone Joe, phone Mike, talk to them. Go to the office. It's right there in Surrey, BC, and or just phone them and just say, hey, man, I think I want to be a freight broker. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know Mike is definitely at a lot of these industry conferences. And so I think that's also a good way to sort of up your educational game. Even if you are just, a regular freight broker, I say regular freight broker, but that's a typical role within this industry at a 3PL. But go to one of these conferences, shake hands, meet some of these different agent providers, and then you can kind of test the waters of which one is going to be a good fit for you, or you can just skip all of that and just go right to SBI's website, and they can answer all the questions that you probably have and probably didn't even know to ask.
Yeah, because Yeah, but there are a lot of other forums, trade shows that you can go to, and you can go to a truck expo or something like that, right? And just get a sense but it's a great industry, and I would recommend it to everyone, really.
Well, Brad, this is typically the part of the show where I ask folks, where to follow your work and website and social media, but we already covered all of that. So instead, we're going to link to SBI's website.
Don't bother me.
Unless you're a customer.
Yes. But go to SBI because they make us look good. And that's not too many people can say that of their companies. I don't think, but maybe I'm wrong, but anyway.
Well, Brad, it was a really good conversation. I especially loved the email tip. I'm going to take that one with me and go add my email newsletter to my email signature, making sure that I have my good email signature. So appreciate your time and your perspective. That this was a lot of fun. Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care.